Hi, everyone. Before we jump into today's episode, we have a special announcement about our guest, Lynn Wong.
That's right. Not only is Lynn a global logistics pro, but she's also a contributing author in the new book, Lead Her Ship Unveiled, Women Leading with Impact, which comes out this Friday, February the 7th, same day as this episode.
So, Lynn, can you tell the audience a little more about this special book?
I am so excited. Lead Her Ship Unveiled is a collection of stories of 20 generous global women leaders around the world who have made significant contributions in their respective domains. You can expect to hear stories of personal leadership, transformational leadership in business, in community, and in life. And more importantly, all the women have come together to share their stories and agree that 100% of all proceeds from book sales go to support Elimu Girls, an incredible nonprofit organization that gives vulnerable young women a chance to become leaders in community and business. So please, if you will, join us on February 7th and get a copy of your book on Amazon via Kindle or paperback. Thank you for the support.
That's great, Lynn.
I'm excited.
Yeah, this is going to be great. So your passion for leadership and mentorship comes through in this book and in our conversation today. So after you listen to this episode, go check out Leadership Unveiled and support a great cause. All right, let's get to it. Here's our conversation with Lynn Wong.
Welcome to Kev Talks, Real World Global Logistics. I'm Kevin Parkerson.
And I'm Kevin Higgins. Together we bring you over 60 years in combined experience in global logistics.
In each episode, we'll dive into the latest industry trends, share practical tips, celebrate wins, and share stories from the logistics front lines, all while helping businesses optimize their logistics operations.
Welcome to today's episode of Kev Talks, Real World Global Logistics. We're thrilled to have a guest whose expertise spans both the corporate and personal development world. Joining us today is Lynn Wong. Lynn is an extraordinary leader who has spent over 22 years in global logistics, working with industry giants like Maersk, the Home Depot, Walmart, and the New York Shipping Exchange, NYSHEX. Lynn has seamlessly transitioned from leading global teams to becoming a sought-after executive well-being coach and career mentor. As the founder of LW Coaches, Lynn now guides high-achieving leaders from burnout to breakthrough, empowering them to work with ease and excellence. She also serves as a career coach at the University of Arkansas Sam Walton Business College, helping EMBA students and alumni discover their full potential. With a focus on holistic well-being, Lynn coaches global leaders to prioritize their health, energy, and work-life integrity. Let's dive into Lynn's journey and explore how she bridges people to possibilities. Lynn, it's a true honor to have you here on our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Oh.
So much fun.
I'm so excited. We've been talking about this for a long time. Yeah, I'm excited. So we know each other for a long time. We met briefly. So why don't you just kind of give us a little background? We talked about something that you have in front of you. And so give us just a little bit of background and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't declare my fandom for the work that both of you have done on and off the air, separately and now together. And it's been such a joy to witness episode 1, Kevin Palooza, and even the latest episode that I caught up to was the one with Kath Earl. Just thank you for adding to the very crowded podcast sphere, but also creating space for untold stories. I think there is a TED Talk about it, that shipping is like the largest, most significant invisible industry. So for both of you to do the work, to bring the stories, and now to invite mine, thank you for doing that.
No, you're very welcome. It truly is an honor. I mean, I see it as an honor to not just to have you, but to be able to tell these stories. And when we started this, we're talking. That's why it's called Real World Global Logistics, is because we wanted to bring practicality and operational practicality to the rest of the industry. So because that's all I know.
Yeah, I'm just really excited to, bring forward your voice, your story. I know the audience is going to get so much out of this episode. So I'm anxious to just allow you to share your experiences, your story, and take it from there.
Yeah, well, how I got to this couch, which is in Northwest Arkansas in the United States. And that's important to declare because I was born, raised, and educated in Singapore and hadn't thought about working abroad, but said yes to a company called Maersk, which then interviewed me, cross-tested me every which way, and then highlighted a 4-year path in global shipping that kind of surprised me. I was like, wow, you see way more potential in me from like this couple-hour interviews and these tests, and you want to invest in me, help me learn a third language, send me abroad if I do all these things right, help me build a network. Yeah, of course. And so my corporate career of over 22 years began with the Maersk Group, that then gave me the opportunity to say yes to an expat assignment in the US, which began in Atlanta, Georgia. And in that time frame, I got a chance to meet my best friend and the love of my life. We're celebrating 20 years, I guess, this next week. So I guess this dates the episode. But in that time, I also got a chance to be invited to the world's largest DIY retailer, the Home Depot, which is where Kevin, you and I met in a very unexpected meeting.
Yes.
And from there, I got a phone call one day from the world's largest retailer to consider joining them. And that phone call came because 2 of the logistics providers that I got to work with at the Home Depot had both said some things about me that activated that call from Walmart. And that phone call turned into an in-person interview and then gave me the best decade of my professional life, with the company that Mr. Sam Walton built. And post-COVID, I realized I was ready to take on 100% fully remote role for more flexibility in my work and life balance, and got to join NYSHEX, the New York Shipping Exchange. From there, something that I perhaps had not consciously deprioritized, but more like was not consciously prioritizing, caught up to me. Mm-hmm. And so I took a health-motivated career sabbatical. And what I thought was just going to be a period of like deep rest and then, come back to the industry, created an opening that made me bravely say, yeah, it's time to graduate from global logistics.
And I love this part of your story. I love this part of your story.
To doing the work that I love. And that I am the one I've been waiting for to get that permission to do this work. And the moment I own that, literally the next door opened to, accelerating my full transition into becoming an executive well-being coach with my own private practice, as well as an invitation from the University of Arkansas to coach executive MBA students and alumni at the Sam Walton College of Business, which is a huge honor. So here we are.
Oh, that's awesome. So what, I know, Kevin, you've got questions, and Lynn, you've got a lot more to your story to tell, but what all does your coaching involve?
Yeah, I fell in love with the idea of coaching, or maybe I discovered coaching as a profession, probably in 2012, when I got to go to Walton Institute as part of the company's investment in its leaders, right? And I met a coach who guided me through how to discover, acknowledge, and live my values, and how to understand how Mr. Sam built his company and the values, of excellence, of integrity, of respect. It was such a really special experience. Then fast forward in about 2018, maybe like 7, 8 years later, I discovered that there was a language for describing what's right about people. And it was what was StrengthsFinder, now known as Clifton Strengths. Right. And it was a magical assessment. Yeah. It gave me vocabulary to own what I kind of felt like I was good at, but didn't have words for or context for. And it so moved me that I decided to get my first certificate. And that was my first step towards going like, oh, someday when I retire, I want to do more of this work.
Right.
And this is step one.
Yeah.
I didn't really think too much about that. I got a chance to apply all of that, but corporate life was good to me and all of that. And then fast forward to summer of 22, as part of my sabbatical, I knew I needed to be doing something. I wasn't just going to sit home and not move. And the something became, I wanted more knowledge about the whole person. And what began as a quest to learn more about physical health actually opened the door to understanding whole person health. So simply put, you have to care for your physical body, your spirit, or your soul, as some people call it, your heart, and your mind. And all of that is holistic health. And then to be supported with where to read, what to listen to, how to apply, how to experiment. That really helped me gain the foundation that was necessary to then, with fear yet confidence, right, to decide to, I want to do this for the next season of my work life, to step into not just executive coaching, but to lead with executive whole person coaching or well-being coaching.
Right.
In order to do my part to energize healthy leaders so they can go on to energize healthy teams and hopefully, companies and therefore communities and literally the world.
So was there a certain point, shifting from logistics to coaching? What, you described a couple of maybe key milestones, but was there like one big, huge, pivotal moment, or person, or, talk to us a little bit about that allowed you to realize, your calling and what you're doing right now today?
Oh boy. I would say accumulated moments were, versus the flip, like I guess the commitment, was the question that I was posed. So let me try and make a little bit more sense of it. So early in my time at the Home Depot, I realized that I had the best job on the team. I was responsible for managing our third-party logistics providers. We used to call them 3PLs until, we had a big project, and then we didn't realize that while we had renamed them to Origin Cargo Managers, it was the exact same term that Walmart used, and it felt so good. I'm like, even if the rest of my, internal business stakeholders didn't understand the big deal, the world's largest retailer did. And so, but at that moment that I realized that I had the best job was also when I realized that, like, oh boy, that meant that I wasn't aspiring to my teammates' job in ocean procurement or customs compliance or drayage or even being the boss of us all. Like I genuinely loved what I got to do with the Origin third-party logistics providers. And it was working with people to make things happen. The margins are really thin in that space. The work is really long, but there was something really satisfying about humans coming together to make things happen. and to anticipate the unknown, and my favorite part, the innovation. So I really love that work, but I knew that I was too young in my career to not want to do any of the other parts of global logistics and shipping. I actually finally made a move inside Home Depot to global sourcing, and that was when the call from Walmart came. And Walmart invited me to talk to them about basically going back to global logistics, going back to doing this 3PL work that I thought I had already completed.
Right.
But there is a scale difference, right? So the Home Depot at that point in time was the world's third largest importer. So I was already honored to be under 30.
Right.
And I was like, I don't need to get any bigger. But number one just called. But what was really special about that 15-minute phone call I thought I was going to have with my first leader, Jeff Irvin, at Walmart. It was going to be 15 minutes because I had heard that they were looking for an ocean services manager. And I went, something's lost in translation. I am not the person you're looking for. Like, it says so on my LinkedIn profile. So I actually called a buddy to say, I don't like calling Walmart and saying wrong number. I'd like to tell them that here's the person you should call. And that 15-minute phone call became honestly 90 minutes. And for anyone listening who knows Jeff Irvin, 90 minutes is a long time. But that just is a testament to his patience with humans. And yeah, I said yes to going back to doing similar work at scale. Right. The Walmart scale, which is incredible. Like, there's no describing it until you get to live it.
Right.
But yeah, that was when I suppose, so maybe I'm not done with logistics yet. And
it's not done with you.
Yeah, and it's not done with me.
Yeah.
And when my friends asked, because those of my close friends who knew me were like, your next stop was going to be China. Why is it Arkansas? And I said, well, it's on the way to China.
Yeah, right. You can get there. Right.
And it is true because I did.
It's all right.
I did get to go out there. Yeah. But to kind of speed up the story, what I noticed at every significant move between companies, between countries, my love for working with people to accomplish significant goals outweighed everything. And in somewhere in that 21, 22, the silence of COVID, I discovered that I hit my learning limit with logistics. Like, I will always love it, but as I admired people who every peak season is unique to them.
Right.
You know, it's either this canal or that canal or different modes. Like, for them, they just kept getting more and more innovative with time. And I just didn't have that love. And then I started to look around for like, okay, what lateral moves can I take? I even interviewed for demoted roles to move into more people development. One way to tell the story is that I was too expensive. You know, I actually tried to make that move twice, once at Home Depot and once at Walmart. And it just didn't happen, even though I said I would take less. Now I tell the story as, well, if that didn't happen, I wouldn't be here now.
That's right. Yep.
And to get to do work you love is an indescribable feeling. And it's a journey that is as much internal as it is external. And I probably spent a bit more time than I realized on the external side. So it took me a while to get here. I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah. Well, listen, this is a series entitled Empowered Logistics. And I think you're in one of the reasons why you're here is to get your perspective. You're in a unique position. You've worked, in many geographies, many different companies. I'd love to get your perspective of a key principle that you see that transcends, geography, that empowers teams. What skill set is needed, or do you see as a key skill set that helps teams and empower teams?
Yeah. It's perhaps the most underrated skill and something that requires deliberate practice, and that is listening. Especially with geography and technology and culture and all of that, I find that listening first is really important. And then listening with all of you. So what we call the spidey sense, the gut instinct, that is listening with all of you. So your eyes, your body, listen with all of that. So listening and listening for common ground. And if you can't find any, point to the obvious. Food.
Right.
Not sports analogies, not parenthood, food. Right. Start, or water. Start there. Right. And when you discover common ground, then it's a natural invitation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then everything else you learn to build and iterate or pivot. Because as traumatic as these times in global shipping and logistics are, there is a fairly sequential approach to logistics and supply chain. It feels like maybe things have to be ordered, and then they have to be produced, then they have to be containerized, transported, distributed, and purchased. So yes, this canal or that airspace, but the sequence still needs to move. And so if you can listen deeply, wholly, and you search for common ground, it's a huge foundation to then understand where empowerment needs to happen. And as a leader, empowerment includes trust, right? Which also means taking some risk, right? Air cover, which is in the risk part, because as a leader, if you have a healthy brand with your team, your stakeholders, your service providers, you get the call on that to move through difficult times and also innovate. So listening is really key. The second I would offer is relationships.
Yes.
And because of the work I do now and the work that I got to do that got me here, is relationship to yourself. First and foremost, relationship to then your family, your team, your organizations, your stakeholders, your customers, is really key. Nothing prepares me for the fact that I would meet the very first CEO that I, worked for in my very first job, is a significant investor in my very last job in the global shipping world. It's incredible. So as you listen, find the common ground, be kind, take care of your relationships with yourself, with others, and then your customers, would be two timeless thoughts I'd like to share for empowered teams in global logistics and supply chain.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
We've talked a lot about relationships in past, some of our episodes, but
it comes up in every episode.
Yeah, it comes up in
I'm
every
glad
episode.
It does.
Yeah. One of the things that it's a skill that needs to continue to be developed, and it seems to be lacking a little bit right now. And, in our industry, specifically, we went away from those relationships for a period of time. And you saw, companies like Maersk and others who cut, certain people who were key to relationships, but it absolutely gets things done. And what you said about listening earlier is one of the things that, we all know him. Mike Simon and I talk about a lot, right? And Mike asks two questions when we talk about certain things. And he asks, what? And then he asks, so what? So when we talk about presenting information or presenting data or anything like that. He's like, what is it? And so what? What information are you actually providing to those people? So I love that, like listening with intent and listening, finding that common ground, understanding where everybody else is coming from so that you can actually be a part of that solution in a more effective way.
Yeah. I want to tap into a little bit of your logistics background and talk a little bit about strategies, help the audience understand maybe some of, from your perspective, strategies that you use to inspire and empower your team. Because you've got a wealth of knowledge, a phenomenal background of working with different teams, different companies, different geographies, different cultures. I'd love to get, your explanation of strategies and help the audience, with what those strategies might be to help inspire and empower their teams.
Yeah, I build off of relationships, right? Because when you understand that all business is in service of humans, not pets, right? Last time I checked, my cat just wants to be fed and hugged when they tell me it's time, right? So all business, all listeners of this podcast, right, are creating and giving and receiving of value to other humans. I think that is fundamental. And then being strategic is then, as a leader, involves the practice of when do you lead from the front and when do you lead from the back, right? It is my great fortune to have begun my career with the world's biggest and the best. So another way to tell my story is when you have worked for the biggest and the best for several peak seasons, where do you go from there?
Exactly.
Right.
So going up.
Right. So it's that piece where leading in service of others. So when you lead from the back, you want to be thinking about how you are investing in your team, whether it's a sincere check-in conversation where they talk more than you, or paying for them to go to a significant conference, or hiring an executive coach for them. Investment. How are you investing in your people as people? And how are you investing in their technical knowledge, right? And technical knowledge in shipping and logistics is so much more than textbook supply chain. I think textbook supply chain is a fantastic foundation, but there's something about the ins and outs of international logistics that is most effectively learned by doing.
Right.
So if you don't get an option to do, get a mentor who's done it, right? So investing in that, investing in your people, developing them, because that development leads to how you plan for resilience, which is a key part of strategy, right? But before we go to resilience, coming back to leadership to round it out, you lead from the front in crisis, always. I remember the explosion that happened in a important port in 2015, and suddenly realizing I was the most senior logistics person outside the United States on behalf of Walmart. And information flow, as you can imagine, was really disjointed. We were a small logistics, still are a small logistics team embedded in a big sourcing office, which had a lot of accountability. And if you have to write the emails, if you have to walk every floor of your stakeholders to ask your peers in other departments to show a little grace, invest a little trust, to get your people the space they need to pick up the phone, to get the truth of what was happening on the ground, you do that. But you can't do that if you haven't invested in the day-to-day brand building with your peers, your bosses, as to the kind of leader you are. So that leadership investment, leadership brand is a key strategy. And then resilience, right? Resilience isn't just about bouncing back. You want people realizing that you don't fail if you don't quit, and that failure doesn't exist if you take the lessons, right? And all of that, every intense challenge, so-called failure, is a crucible to birth the next innovation. And as a leader, if you are strategic and realize that resilience is about regenerating your people, whether it's donuts, coffee, extra PTO, team building, scavenger hunt on the square in Northwest Arkansas, take care of your people as a primary strategy, displaying it through leadership and accounting for resilience. I have found, while it showed up differently at Home Depot versus Walmart, it's timeless.
You mentioned mentorship a few minutes ago. I know you're a big advocate of mentorship. Give the audience a little bit, and the leaders, what skills, or would you get a leader to foster mentorship within their team? Give them some tips or approaches or strategies to do that.
Yeah. Having had the opportunity to spend some time diving into certifications for coaching and all that, it's important to distinguish between mentorship and coaching.
Okay.
Mentorship is advice from lived experience. And so as a leader, it's important to identify stories that you can share of when you learn something, whether by choice or by surprise, preferably with a healthy dose of vulnerability, to connect with your team, to inspire your teams, and then role modeling and encouraging. I find it difficult for a leader to preach mentorship and the benefits of mentorship if they themselves have not been a beneficiary of mentorship. And being deliberate could mean a one-time mentoring lunch, or a half hour every other month for a mentoring relationship. Making time for that could be really beneficial, whether it's technical knowledge or institutional knowledge or tribal knowledge, especially key in global logistics operations. With coaching, then, coaching really is guiding, not the sports kind where you're seeing clipboards and yelling from the sidelines. No, it's the guiding from where this person says they are to where they want to be. And if you need analogies, whether that of a farmer, who does everything, buys the right seeds, waters, tills the land, but if the seed don't grow, nothing farmer can do, right? So having a leader who first makes space in their life to experience coaching and mentorship is, I think, valuable to encouraging their teams to make time for that and be authentic and actually be able to back them up, because sometimes that means meeting conflicts.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's get to a really good topic that I know we're going to spend a lot of time on: burnout. Yeah. Being in the logistics field, high demand, decision-making industry like logistics, burnout can be, pretty prevalent. How would you guide leaders to find that balance between excellence, high performing, and burnout?
Begin a relationship with yourself. Begin a relationship with the person in the mirror. If you can't stand to look at yourself in the mirror for more than 10 seconds, that's a data point.
Preach.
And that relationship to yourself is really key to integrity, right? So I know that in media, we think of integrity associated with your word is your bond, your say-do ratio, but integrity is also descriptive of wholeness, right? So all of us are whole, but not all of us realize that we're squished sometimes. Servant leadership done wrong is a recipe for physical and mental burnout, right? So having a relationship with yourself acknowledging that you are literally irreplaceable. Your job is replaceable. You are irreplaceable. I think that's an important distinction that I learned much later than I would have wanted to, which really commits me to my work now. The best and highest leaders I know have had their own versions of quiet, covered up burnout. But just like we are teaching the next generation the value of compound interest, I think it's healthy to borrow that analogy for our health. You know, that it is more than brushing your teeth. But a lot of the brushing your teeth analogies come from, so your teeth don't fall out. Why can't it be because you can eat great food?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so it, not to belittle the question, but my simple offering would be to first have a relationship with yourself. Are you in integrity with your whole person? You don't have to fix it right away. It's the question. Because that's that awareness, 10 seconds in the morning, right? And then pay attention to it and do simple things to get back.
I think that since I'm the oldest one here,
You are.
Most experienced.
the most experienced.
Seasoned.
We'll put it that way.
Seasoned.
Growing up in my generation with you literally suppress that. You do the work, you suppress it, you get on, you do what you're supposed to do, you know, push your feelings, whatever it is. And I think people my age, I see the burnout, but you see the flame dying, but you just keep going. And we've been talking for months now. And I think it's important for us to recognize that, have that relationship with ourselves, know where we're at, know we are irreplaceable. We can be replaced in our job, but to acknowledge that is huge for my generation and above, right? And below, I guess, if you will. So I just felt like the need to say that, because acknowledging that we can get burnout. You and I've talked about it. I've experienced it. I've had those challenges. I remember specifically October 2020, I took off and I'm like, I have to figure myself out. I took off for days and I just wrote in the book, what do I want to do? And had you been in this role now, then I could have sought out that professional growth coach. So I think I'm just speaking to our listeners, like, we do need to acknowledge that. We need to recognize ourselves. We do need to have that relationship with ourselves. So I'm agreeing with you 100% and just acknowledging that have been the worst at that.
No, I think that's a really good point. I think for me, what helps me is to know and to hear the success stories of someone being able to break through in that burnout to now finding a well-beingness, so, not giving any names, but I'm sure you have plenty of success stories. I think that will be really good for the audience to hear, to know that it happens. It's not, it's not just a wish out there. It can be done. It is done. There are ways to do that. And there are many stories, of someone being able to break through on the burnout, and come out on, on the other side, in a well-being and in a balanced way.
Yeah. Thank you for acknowledging the confidential nature of my work.
Yeah.
And so maybe a few stories for you. From a place of integrity, then it feels right to share the story that when I chose to leave NYSHEX and start my sabbatical, Gordon was incredibly gracious, as was the team, very supportive. And I knew that I needed to close out my chapter there to really focus on getting healthy again. But there were 2 phone calls I made to 2 significant leaders in my life, Gary Adams and Brian Most. I worked for them at Walmart. And, both were met with such genuine care. And then something surprised me about what they said. Then this was 2 separate conversations. They both commended me for having the courage to prioritize my health and address it now before it got worse.
Right.
And it was an aha moment for me that, oh my goodness. So there's a possible correlation from a lot of the executives I had heard about, known, who have had like severe cancer, other diagnoses, that there's a possible correlation. And that, while my break was tough enough, that, wow. So that was a big aha moment. So, and that was choosing to break through, not having broken through yet, right? But in the middle of burnout, you realize you have a choice to break through, and that is when it begins. So that's my story. I've had the good fortune to coach a couple of clients with a mixed background, so corporate as well as significant startups, founder startups, Series A, Series B. And there is an identity transition that happens. And I got to coach one of my clients as she completed a decade of helping build a company, selling it. And, we connected because she wanted to know how I work through my identity, because she saw that I'd been at Walmart for a decade before doing this work. And so happy to share that she was very surprised and open to the whole body approach, where we had well-being check-ins on how was her body, how was her mind, how was her heart, how was her spirit, and from better drinking, water drinking habits, to starting to dance again, to reactivate her creative spirit. She is doing really well now. She's gone on to start up several other companies and is actively giving back to a community that has really inspired her in her startup journey. I have another client who thought he was looking for a career coach because he was at this mile marker where he's hit all his significant financial goals for his business, and thought he needed help to transition the business. But he, again, was very open to me taking let's do a well-being check-in. Let's talk. I'm going to ask you questions about how are you eating? How are you drinking water? How are you moving? How are you sleeping? How are you breathing? And then we will also get into the mechanics of what you want to work on, that you say you want to work on.
Right.
Right. And so at the completion of the coaching journey, he had clarity to what he wanted to do with his business, what he wanted to add on. But he has reconnected to the most important relationship of all, his relationship with himself. And we've had some fun making steps to wholeness as small as possible. The high achieving types I like to coach like to have grand goals. Like, I want to learn how to play the guitar. And then when you meet me, I'm like, can you just smile at the guitar every day? Just smile. And then it makes them smile. Then they can't help it. Then I'll be like, step 2, you smile, then you pat the guitar. Step 3, then you hug or hold the guitar. And you don't have to play the guitar. That's all you do. And then inevitably, because they're high achievers, right? Some will find their way back to guitar again, and some will just remember to smile at their guitar as their return to a relationship with themselves, and not feel like they're selfish or, that they're weak.
Right.
So hopefully that gives you a flavor.
Drink water, dance, and hug your guitar is what I heard, Kevin.
I'm going to go home,
right?
And I'm going to smile.
And you do all of that.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe I'll give it a pat.
Drink water.
Drink water.
So, Lynn, how can companies better support, their team, in building skills that nurture personal growth, as well as their own well-being.
Mhm.
You know, what guidance would you give to leaders to help their teams do that?
I will sound like a broken record, but start having a relationship with yourself. And so listen for what your body needs, listen to what your mind wants. So your body might be, you might think it's hunger, but sometimes it's actually dehydration. Your mind, take your PTO. Don't think too hard. Take it all. Right?
Yes.
And then, like we talked about earlier, listen for. If you don't practice listening to yourself and start to see the benefits, it's actually quite hard that you would want to gift your teams that, because the demands of the business world is real and intense. Then invite your team to tell them, we're currently in a workplace where close to 5 generations are in the workforce, right? So the people that don't know how to submit a resume, without computer, or don't know what to do when the phone rings, they're in the workforce as the people who are learning PowerPoint at, much later in life.
Yeah.
So invite, and then be surprised, right? Because yes, there's some visual stuff that suggests that some may be more experienced than otherwise, but like take parenthood. So it's not just mothers or fathers' needs, but it's parenthood. How can you support someone in their season of parenthood? And how can you support someone in their season of parenthood and caregiving? Because caregiving is encompassing, right? But parenthood has a intensity inside of it. And then just sit back and be surprised, inspired by the answers. And then take the smallest action possible. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Well, listen, I know you have an affiliation and a support of the University of Arkansas. So this kind of goes in along with your interaction with the student body. What advice would you give to young professionals who are looking to, strive to be leaders within the logistics industry? What advice would you give? What advice are you giving?
Well, they'll hold me accountable. I hope some of them listen to it. But first, I would be remiss to say, if I didn't mention that it really is an honor to be a coach, guiding the EMBA students, not just of any college, but at the Sam Walton College of Business. So what this means is, as these young people, and people of all ages, really, is the young and the young at heart, because my youngest client has been in their 20s and my most experienced clients actually in their 60s. So it speaks to the appeal, of the executive MBA program. It's very intentional. They all come to invest in their careers, not their education, their careers. And as part of the investment, they go to school, right? And so, again, relationships. I encourage them to be deliberate in their relationships with themselves and with their peers and their professors in class, right? To build a lifelong network that they will never have. They might enter the program with one job, one company, but they might complete the program with another job, another company, right? But the relationship, the experiences that they have in this EMBA journey is theirs for life to nurture.
Right.
So I think that's super key. The other thing I would say is, I've invited my clients in the university as well as outside to start developing their work-life integrity compass or plan. And it's very simply, one, acknowledging that work is a creation of value for yourself and others. So if you acknowledge that work is creation of value, then the next level down, or the next layer, is paid work versus unpaid work, right? So paid work, supply chain consultancy, from experience, from certifications, applied, it generates income. But if you do not do the unpaid work of eating well, drinking water, doing laundry, you're not going to be able to sustain dancing,
hugging your
guitar, right? So acknowledging that even when it doesn't generate income, you want to be creating work that creates value for yourself and others, right? Friendship, taking time to do this podcast, visiting, that's work, right? no direct correlation, but maybe there's a future correlation, who knows? That's really important to think about work that way. And then life. I can't help it. Acronyms are my thing. I think it might be a cross between working for retail and in shipping. I can't get away from acronyms. So my favorite acronym for life is love in full expression. So I know Simon Sinek says find your why, but the find your why has put me down some really bad rabbit holes. So right now I'm enjoying life is simply love in full expression. And think about what that means to you, you know, love for your work, love for the value you create, love for the people, just simply love in full expression. And then integrity, like I talked about. Yes, your word is your bond, your say-do ratio is important, but really your wholeness. Claim your wholeness because you are whole. If you're listening to this podcast, I promise you are whole because your ears are working.
Right.
Just notice where you might be a little squished. Maybe you hadn't eaten lunch yet, but because you want to support Kevin and Kevin, you're tuning into this podcast. Go grab something to eat, something good for yourself. So by acknowledging work-life integrity, you can then start to ask the simple question of what would I want for my health, wealth, and relationships? And my recommendation is keep it on a 8.5 by 11 sheet as you answer those questions, and write anywhere, start anywhere. And if you really need to box it in a bit more, do it for the remainder of the year. What do you want for your health, wealth, relationships? And then do it for the next 2 years. So you get your 3-year plan, right? And if you're really like scared and stuck because you want to be perfect, just start writing down some dates that matter to you. Your birthday. How old will you be? Birthday of your loved one, pet or otherwise. Next year. And then the year after. Just ground some facts. And then come back to what would you want? And the goal of that 8.5 by 11 with no lines is simply to just get started. Just get started, and it's yours. So some of my clients come out with a plan. Some of my clients come out with a compass. What's most important is it's yours for you. And that is a tangible way to begin a relationship with yourself, even if you can't look at yourself in the mirror and appreciate yourself for 10 seconds before you go about your day.
Right.
So there it is.
I love that idea because there are some of us, raise my hand, who feel like you need to have a fairly significant plan, right? And I used to be like much more rigid about the plan, right? And then I think it was because we grew up in Walmart, we were exposed to a number of incredible leaders. And I remember one of those gentlemen was like, and I don't think it was his quote. I think it was somebody else's. A good plan executed today is better than a great plan executed tomorrow. Right. And so, and then Colin Powell spoke, got to see him, and he has a formula, P equals 40 to 70. P equals a probability of success. 40 to 70 is a percentage of information that you need to get to the probability of success. So if you have anywhere between 40 and 70% of the information, then go. And so I have remembered those. And now instead of just like, I got to have a full blown strategy, I've got to have everything lined out. It's like, okay, do I have enough information to move forward? Yes, I have enough information to move forward. Let's go. But I'm still a victim of my own doing sometimes where I'm like, okay, I've got to have this. I've got to have that. I've got to have this. I've got to have that before I can move forward. But I think just doing, just go, whether you have a plan or a compass and just writing it out. And so I've been asking myself that a lot lately. It's like, what do I want my life to look like? Doesn't have to be perfect. What do I want, in my life? And so whether it's professional or whether it's personal. So that what you just like, that really resonates with me, just to kind of like, you gotta just, you don't have to play the guitar. Just hug it.
Just hug it.
You'll get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say in my own journey as well, and in the clients I get to work with, that's where you can see the difference where you're ready for a coach, right? So I spoke to the difference between mentor and coach. I also want to bring up a really significant professional to consider including in your life is a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
right? So therapists really help people realize that they're not blocked, but there are some wounds that they ought to give time for to heal from, right? Is as simple as if you cut yourself, yes, you can take care of the cut, but the body heals itself, but you have to be intentional. And so, speaking to a therapist is valuable. And speaking to a coach is equally valuable because one helps you move through blocks by tapping into some things in your history, some things in your lived experience, that you need to process with a professional, not because you're weak,
Right.
but it's just you've not made it a priority,
Right.
so you have no practice.
Yep.
Right. And then meeting a mentor is valuable because that person's lived experience could inspire yours.
Right.
But let's remember, it's that person's lived experience.
Right.
And you'll know when you're ready for a coach, when you're ready to say, okay, I want to practice being more of me. And that's where you meet a coach, especially the health and wellness coaches, which are a little bit unique from the significant range of coaches you can have out there. All coaches are good guides.
Right.
Health and wellness coaches are a little bit unique because, especially the national board ones, because the national board coaches are required to honor every client with unconditional positive regard, to return to more wholeness, and they are resourceful and they can do it. And so coming back to the analogy of the cut, right? So a health and wellness coaching professional might help you with, hey, what do you think you can do to protect yourself from getting cut again?
Right.
And you have to want to do the action, right? So it's not teaching. It's not about modules. It's also, where could you find this information, right? Because this is helping you get into the practice of being more of you versus trying to ambitiously reach for new habits just because some TED Talk inspired you, or someone said, that. Habits are important, but it is possible that once you get into the practice of being more of you, enjoying more of you, the habits will follow. So it's really valuable to think about having a group of professionals that support your well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't call them board of directors, especially for my clients. I love the high achieving kinds. So the whole board of director terminology is actually very stressful, because they're either being directed
Mm-hmm. Right.
or because you're out of practice taking care of yourself. And it's a very different practice taking care of yourself, your business, and your people.
Right.
And of course, your stakeholders.
Right.
So hope I didn't go off on too much of a tangent.
No, that was really, really good.
But,
I think I'm digesting,
yeah.
quite a bit of it. So you often talk about the concept of community. Talk a little bit about, how do you build a strong community that will help the logistics industry evolve and grow and develop?
Yeah. One of the things about community that is really important is there are professional communities, and then there is sort of that, general communities. And a workplace should, in my humble opinion, in my experience, a workplace should always be viewed as a professional community. I think to think that it is family is actually quite stressful.
Thank you.
Because everyone's family looks different, is different.
Right.
There's quite a lot of trauma in many people's families. and you can't ever fire a family. You literally can't.
Right.
And so to have a healthy
Say that louder. Say that louder.
You can't fire your family. They are there to help you grow as a whole person, and work is a significant component of a person's life, but it isn't family. So thinking of workplace as a community is important. Now, within the global logistics community, it's actually quite special because the global logistics and shipping community has this awareness that something of value is always being transported. It's the world's endless, I promise no sports analogy, but it really is like that baton passing.
Mm-hmm.
People who work in this space just understand that you may not speak the same language, but goods get put in a container as of now on a boat or on a plane, right? Before and after the trucks. So there's a lot of common language there already. So respecting and appreciation for each person's role in the global community is a great place to start, right? And like I said, listen for common ground. Start with what feels good, right? And with every conference that you go to, every webinar that you attend, take a pause. Is there someone in that virtual or in-person session that seems interesting, that might be a cool friend in the workplace to have?
Mm-hmm.
And be sincere, right? Simple things. And there are some really incredible trailblazers out there. My personal favorite being Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with her podcast, Let's Talk Supply Chain and Blended. She's out there creating platforms, inviting people into powerful conversations, and sharing her story along the way to really humanize the global logistics and shipping industry, and dare I say, energize and make it more accessible to the youth. The containers will not move themselves, no matter how much we apply technology. And a concluding thought to that would be just, as the world grows, there will always be a need for the transportation of goods and services, right? With more and more technology comes the requirement to actually be more and more connected to our gut instinct, our intuition, and our humanity. Because when the electricity goes out, the AI will not work. But the power we have inside us, it doesn't go out.
Right.
If you got your breath, if you got your heartbeat, you're powered up, even when the electricity for the AI is done.
There you go. Well, you saved the best for last right there,
Oh,
right?
my gosh. I love that. You got your breath and your heartbeat, you're powered up.
Yeah, that's true. Well, listen, Kevin and I, we've looked forward to this episode for quite some time. It's definitely lived up to our expectations. I think we could keep going and going and going, but
For hours.
Kevin, is there any other closing thoughts outside of, I want to give Lynn an opportunity to tell the audience how to get in touch with her, if they need be, and where to find her, and give her that opportunity. But before she does that, any closing thoughts, Kevin?
I think really just ask the same question that we try to ask to a lot of our guests, or most of our guests, is because we're trying to make sure that we give practical application to the next generation of people that coming into supply chain, whether they're your students or students people who haven't even made that decision, people that are looking into getting into global logistics. And if you could give them one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh gosh. Especially for people with a desire to come into the global logistics work. So global means 24/7, right? Someone is asleep when you're awake, right? It is imperative that you rest to rise. And if you practice, with ease. You do. If not, you'll be out of integrity with your ideas, your innovation, your relationships, and your results. So
Rest
to rise with ease.
In a relationship,
with yourself.
With yourself.
Yeah. If you find me on LinkedIn under the Lynn Wong or my website, lwcoaches.com, you'll find a way to book a call with me. If you want to talk to me about your work-life integrity plan,
Book it.
if you want to ask me about what does Rest to Rise mean, and is it an acronym or are they acronyms? The answer is yes, but call me and I'll tell you.
Right on. I love
That's
it.
really good.
So
That's
it's been
really
an
good.
honor and a joy to share with you today.
Yeah, this has been great. Thanks, Lynn. Thanks for sharing your incredible insights, your words on empowerment, leadership, mentorship, and fostering growth in the industry. It's truly inspiring. We're grateful to have your knowledge and your expertise on today's podcast. So to our listeners, thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for being our friend.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Kev Talks, Real World Global Logistics. If today's discussion inspired you, don't forget to follow, subscribe, rate, and share our podcast.
Remember, every great journey in logistics starts with a single step forward. Let's continue working together to transform the industry.